What's going on, YouTube? This is SG1 Sports here at the voice of college football. We're going to preview the 2023 schedule for the Florida Gators. Here was the schedule from 2022. You can see a 6-7 record, 6-6 in the regular season. Started off great with the win over Utah, and you thought maybe Florida was going to be have a good year this past season, but then they lose to Kentucky at home. Just really needed to win that game at home. Then South Florida, remember that game was actually close. Then they played on the road at Tennessee. Not surprised now that they lost that game, of course. They took care of business against Eastern Washington and Missouri, so it was still all right there for them. They were 4-2, still the chance to have a good year. Within the LSU game, they lose that one. Then they lose to Georgia. But then they did bounce back. They beat Texas A&M and South Carolina before losing to Vanderbilt, which was inexcusable, and then Florida State. So just an up and down year for Florida. Some moments where they looked like a top 25 team and some other moments where they didn't even look like an average team. So that it was just up and down all year for them. Even in some of the games. Just go to the Georgia game. Just in that game alone, there were times where they looked really good, and there were times where they just didn't look good at all. So inconsistency really the story for Florida in 2022. Let's look ahead to 2023 now. This is who they play outside of the division. They'll play on the road at Utah this time, then McNeese and Charlotte, and then they'll play Florida State at home. So you've got two Power 5 games in the non-conference, Utah and Florida State. And I give a lot of credit to these teams like Florida that have a rivalry game every year. They're going to play Florida State every year, a big non-conference game, and then they still go out and schedule a big Power 5 opponent like Utah. So a lot of credit for Florida for doing that. Gives you two quality opponents in the non-conference. And then you look at who they play out of the West. They'll play Arkansas and on the road at LSU. Of course, they play LSU every year, but at least they avoid Alabama. I guess that's the good news, but that's a pretty tough draw, again, with Arkansas and LSU out of the West. Here is the schedule week by week. They will open up with Utah on the road. Of course, played them at home last year. This time they'll go travel to Utah. That's going to be a very tough game. Tough place to play to open up the season. McNeese is up next after that. Then they'll play Tennessee on September 16th. Huge game early in the year if they're going to have any chance to make a run in the SEC East. You're going to have to win that game at home because, of course, you still have Georgia on the schedule as well. And they're going to be the favorites, I believe, in the East once again. And then Charlotte after that. And then Kentucky on the road September 30th. So two conference games there in the month of September. Also a very tough non-conference game on the road at Utah. You're going to know by the end of September about this Florida team. There's a good chance they could be 2-3. I mean, it could look bad again. You've got to find a way to win one of those games against Utah, Tennessee, and Kentucky, I think. Start off 3-2. And then again, the schedule, it's tough all the way through. After that, they'll play Vanderbilt. That'll be a revenge game for Florida. Remember, they did lose to Vandy last year. So that's one that they've got to win. Then it's on the road at South Carolina. That's going to be a tough one. That'll be a revenge game for South Carolina. Then they'll get the bye week before playing Georgia. Of course, Georgia is going to be just a monumental test once again for Florida. It's just Georgia's best. They've become the best program in college football. I think that's pretty clear. And I don't really see them dropping off next year. So that'll be a very, very tough game there against Georgia. Then it's Arkansas at home. Maybe a winnable game there. Arkansas should be pretty good. They did lose a lot of guys to the transfer portal, so that's the good news. Plus, it's a home game. And then after that, they'll play LSU on the road. You've actually got back-to-back road games with LSU and Missouri. Those will be tough to win. And then Florida State, who's been a preseason top 5 team for a lot of people already, that will be tough as well. So this is a very tough schedule. I mean, no doubt about it. This is a tough schedule. You look at, worst case scenario here, just games that they could very realistically lose. I mean, there's a good chance that they'll lose. You've got Utah, Tennessee, Kentucky on the road. We'll skip Vandy. Let's say they lose to South Carolina on the road. Georgia. Let's say they beat Arkansas, but they lose on the road to LSU, Missouri, and then Florida State. I mean, that gives you 8 losses right there. I mean, it's a tough schedule. I mean, you flip that around. If they take care of business, they beat Tennessee, and they pull off a win against South Carolina and Missouri. I mean, you still got several losses here on the schedule. So it's just a really tough schedule for Florida this year. They pretty much always play one of the toughest schedules in the country, and I believe that this year it's right up there near the top, if not at the top. Just a very tough schedule. I guess the good news is you've only got one back-to-back road game there with LSU and Missouri. But again, you get Vandy at home, Tennessee at home, Arkansas at home. Georgia is a home game, but of course it's a neutral site game for them. So that means you've got 5 SEC games away from Gainesville. It's just a really tough schedule. No other way to put it. A 2023 schedule for Florida definitely going to be, like I said, one of the toughest in all of college football.